I want to build a little bit of empathy for some tricky projects with some tricky words for some other roles that might exist in your team. So I thought that this kind of topic about infra projects would be fine when I started doing them 2.5 years ago. Because my whole career I started as a developer, and then I worked on very technical projects, things without any UI, ETL engines, APIs, different type of queuing systems, messages, all good, fun, technical stuff. So when this infra project landed, I was like, great, okay, this is fine. I can do this. It's no different to anything else. But suddenly databases weren't called databases anymore. And virtual machines weren't called virtual machines anymore. And things like Kubernetes clusters turned up and EC2 instances. And I was like, okay, I'm really lost now. I totally don't know what's going on. And then you land on a project as a BA or a product person, you're supposed to bridge that gap between business and technology and help people understand. And when you don't really understand it yourself, it can be very, very tricky. So I want to tell you a little bit about that, but also why you should care that they don't care. They don't understand your world and your lingo. So $6 million, that is the average amount that enterprise organizations, and I thought it was just enterprise, but it's not. It's all organizations spend on their cloud infrastructure, according to the Flexera State of Cloud report. 10% of those organizations spend more than $60 million on their cloud infrastructure. This is not just anything they build on top of the infrastructure. This is not including the people who build it for them, just the cloud itself, which is a crazy amount of money. What was also said in that report was that the highest priority of CEOs with respect to cloud was reducing and optimizing that cloud spend. This is a big deal because it means that infra engineers and engineering teams in general might have to do more with less. So how do you justify that money, that big price tag? Not only are infrastructure and cloud expenditures very high, you're also super important. So this is the 2019 State of DevOps report, a picture I found from there. And it shows how important different things are to help with organizational performance. This is the bit your CEOs and your MDs and your product people are going to care a lot about, this organizational performance, how fast you're able to deliver things, how effectively are you able to meet your business goals. So if you were at Andrew Harmer-Law's talk, where he spoke about the 4 key metrics, that's what he's talking about. Software delivery performance, availability, all that good stuff, that's how you measure them. Infrastructure teams have an impact or are entirely responsible for all of these bits. So if you are on an infra team or if you're an infra engineer, you're pretty important in helping measure the 4 key metrics and helping your CEOs and product people. But I only know about this now. So I'm going to tell you, first of all, where I got it wrong. And I got it quite wrong. And this is a bit embarrassing because someone who was where I got it wrong is sat in the audience. So this was a company that focused on insurance. So they were really, really key in making sure that if you had an insurance quote that you wanted to get, you needed to insure your car, you needed to insure your house, they would be the people who gave you the quote for it. But they'd been around for a really long time. They were really, really important. They had a huge market share, which, as you know, in the digital world, meant you were rife for disruption. So they needed to do things better, do things quicker. They were on-prem at the time with a new product that was in this hybrid environment, but they thought they could do better. They got a bunch of very, very, very smart people in who said, hey, we can help you deliver software quicker. We can help your customer data be more secure. We can help you be more resilient, more flexible, more scalable. We think you should move to the cloud. Super exciting. Sounds super fun. I was like, great, we can do that. We can help you. We can move to the cloud. So we came up with this big goal of we want to migrate everything to the cloud as cloud natively as possible. Sounds really exciting, should be simple, we can totally do it. And then we sat down and thought about it. We came up with a plan to move things over and started speaking to our different stakeholders. What does more resilient mean? When you're sharing a benefit like resilience, like scalability, what does that mean? What does that do? It's quite nebulous and it doesn't mean anything to us. So we sat down and we were like, okay, the components give you 99.9% availability. Sounds pretty good. We planned around that. It was better than what the system was doing already, so we thought we were on to the winner. So get about 4 to 6 months into the project. We'd move some stuff over into the cloud, happy days. And we sat down and chat to marketing. And marketing were really, really interested in what we were doing because a lot of the competitors were already in the cloud. And they said, 1 second, went on Google, typed into the system, are you going to be able to offer 99.99% availability? Because our competitors can. And you can imagine our faces dropped. We realized we hadn't spoken to all the people we needed to speak to before we started designing things, before we started planning our migration. We'd missed a bunch of stakeholders and a bunch of important people, and we couldn't do it without completely re-architecting and ballooning our costs. So that was one big lesson learned, is your stakeholders aren't just your developers, and they're not the only people that matter and care about what you're going to be doing. So top tip number 1. Another story is about Azure AD. So I don't know how many of you know about Active Directory, which is sort of the on-prem equivalent of Azure AD for identity management. The original system that they had was built quite heavily and relied on a lot of features of Active Directory. The on-prem version, being able to create as many users as you wanted and giving them any kind of permission you wanted. Azure AD doesn't let you do that. Azure AD lets you have specific admin users and a bunch of other people with just general accounts that are much, much cheaper. We needed to give everyone the admin account so that there was the functionality available that would let them do the things they were doing before. Each of these admin accounts cost you, I think it was $9 a month. Some of the users, some of the people they sold it to, had 200 people using the system at once at the same time. That's not scalable. That would have made the cost of the system absurdly high. We realized we'd got it a little bit wrong. Now, we went to the product team, we went to the all of the tech leaders, and we were like, okay, what can we do about this? This is way too expensive. It's not a reliable model. What are we going to do? And product looked at us completely stony-faced and were like, you're moving to the cloud. You said you were going to move everything to the cloud. You remember that goal I said right at the beginning, that one thing that we were going to do? Whoops. It meant we had no way to negotiate because we wanted to leave everything where it was and architect our way out of it in the future. Nope, couldn't do that. So another one where we got a bit stuck, and it worked more effectively eventually, but it was really, really, really hard. It added months to our delivery timescale. It was more expensive than we wanted it to be, and could have been avoided if we had sliced our cake a little bit different and hadn't started with, let's go to the cloud, everything all at once. So we didn't have a good goal. It was bad. But those of you who went to Andrew's talk, 4 key metrics were awesome. These were kind of the guiding principles across the whole program of work. Teams became suddenly way more empowered and independent. They had a lot more ownership over their pipelines. They had a lot more control over what they could do and what they didn't have to do. They were able to play around a lot more, where it had previously been quite strongly kept by operations. And also they improved the quality and stability. So before they had no way of knowing how stable their system was, they could see that now. And I think they were able to get closer to that reliability target that marketing wanted, which was great. But these were not the benefits we sold to the business. The business wanted to be able to be more flexible and more scalable, and we couldn't provide data around that, which was really unfortunate, actually. So the value that we got was not related to the business goals. But how do you do that? It sounds really simple that you should be able to slice this pie in whatever way you want to get goals that map to your business, but it's really, really, really tricky, as we found out. So how would you do that? COVID happened. So I was on an infrastructure team right in the middle of this. Was working with a healthcare provider, and they gave us a call when there was an announcement on the telly that people should look up this particular company, this service, to find more information about what was going on in COVID, what the rules were, and it fell over immediately, just gone kaput. No one could get any information. No one could figure out what was going on. They just got a 404. It was bad. So you can imagine people are stressed out, people are frustrated, people really, really wanted information to know what rules were happening. Can I go out and see my family? Nope, couldn't do any of that. It all fell over, which was frustrating because they'd already built quite a good system. It was in the cloud already. It was somewhat scalable, somewhat reliable, but fell over. So it demands a lot on already creaky infrastructure. And it's not just healthcare that had this. This happened kind of across the board as people started working from home, used internet services more often. And what it meant for this healthcare provider was there was a massive amount of focus from executives. So they were really, really laser focused on what this team was doing and making sure that this site never went down again. Like that was the biggest thing, like never go down again. Eventually we'll figure out money. We need to know how many people can use our system at the same time. We want to make sure that people get all of the information they need. So we had a huge amount of exec support. It was amazing. It totally changed the infrastructure team's way of thinking. They provided super clear direction and were really transparent about what they needed. And by that, I mean, they started by saying, you need to make things bigger, right? And we were like, okay, we can. It will cost you this much money. Okay, well, you just need to make sure that people don't get kicked out and that they can access the information they need. Okay, great. We can work with that. So we introduced queuing. So that meant that they might have taken a bit longer, but everyone got access to everything they needed. Fantastic. Once we were able to do that, then suddenly everything got really expensive. They had originally had about a £2,000 a month AWS bill, not too crazy. It went up to £35,000 a month, pretty much overnight, because the way you deal with things falling over because there's not enough capacity is you make them really, really big. But we were able to help them creatively and reduce the size by introducing scalability. So they were able to flex up and down really responsively. They knew they'd have a lot of traffic at certain times, so they would have auto-spiking, auto-scaling. It was great. Reduced the bill down to £3,000 a month, which was much, much more reasonable when you're a healthcare provider during a pandemic. And what it did that was most exciting for me was they had a huge amount of confidence in the infrastructure team. And they were continually engaged. This wasn't like a one-off and we're done with you kind of thing. They kept being engaged and asking what infrastructure could do for their business. So they are awesome when you get exec support. But how do you get it? You do not want the reason for you to have exec support be that your system fell over and you need to get it up again. I'm sure plenty of people in this room have had that. It's not great. It's not ideal. You get that panic, everyone working 14-hour days and suddenly ends up burnt out. No, we don't want that. So how do you do it if it's not trying to stop everything being on fire? That is part 3, making infra the most important initiative. And after those 2 very interesting, challenging projects, I sort of figured it out, thanks to a very, very smart product mentor that I got. So it was working with a neobank, who had originally done something different and then transferred into banking. And the challenge with that is they had a whole load of infrastructure that existed and it needed to stay up, but it was no longer fit for purpose. The number of customers they had went way down, but the type of things they were doing were way broader and way more complicated. So we came in, and at the same time as doing an infra and tech improvement, we started thinking about it from a product side. How do we map to organizational goals? What is the company trying to achieve in the next 2 to 5 years? What does that look like? And this product mentor came to me and he said, the OKR stuff, the organizational stuff, I can do. But platform as a product, infra as a product, that's a thing, that's exciting. I need you to figure it out. I was like, oh no, oh gosh. Haven't done product before, what this is going to look like. So I had a panic. He sat down and said, start with your product missions. So we came up with 4. And the most important part about product missions here was that you thought about the customers first. So never in an infra team had I thought about who am I building my infrastructure for, other than developers to put stuff on top of. So we came up with originally the tech community, right? So they don't have as much cognitive load. They reduce the blockers, handovers, improve productivity, all of the stuff you sort of know if you're in an infra or an SRE team. But then we thought about it a bit further. So your banking customers, they want a stable and reliable foundation for the banking app via the infrastructure that they've got. They want to be able to use the system effectively. For delivery communities, so the infra team at this neobank they were called the SRE team, but they were literally just churning through tickets all day, every day. Long list of tickets would come in and it would just grow and grow and grow and grow because there wouldn't be any time for them to actually do the tickets that they had been assigned. And they were like massive blockers, like to the point where any new initiative, they knew they would have to add 2 months to the time it would take to deliver because this team would spend that long trying to get the components out the door. So we were like, right, let's focus on that as well. Reduce the reliance on support tickets and improve the time to market. And last but not least, this is the management team. This is the CEO. So when I said at the beginning he should care, this is why. And it's to provide transparency and governance of the cloud infrastructure, meeting their accreditation requirements. It's a bank. Most infrastructure teams are going to work on a product or a platform or a tool or a system, whatever, that's going to have some sort of governance behind it. You're going to need to get ISO accredited, or you're going to need to get sign-off on something. And we thought infra teams are going to have a huge impact on that. Even if you're not doing anything super fancy, GDPR regulations means that you're going to have to do something about cleaning up data. So, management team. Next, proposed initiatives. And I say this completely sincerely, that infrastructure engineers are some of the smartest people on the planet, and they know exactly what they need to do. So before, when we tried to get a brainstorm of ideas, it was just like an absolute smorgasbord of as many things that you could think of. It was like 50 different initiatives that were all about a load of different things. So we tried to categorize them. We tried to make them a little bit more stable. So here's what we did. So we've got some that are aligned to the tech community, some for banking, some delivery, some for management. And what's important that we found here was it kind of didn't matter where they went, as long as they went somewhere. And if they didn't go somewhere on here, they got thrown away. Not forever, but for now. Unfortunately, they were not always the most appropriate. So a lot of them were massive. If you saw on the last slide, infrastructure as code, everything. I asked how long that would take. They said 2 years. No. Or they were super vague, or they were low value right now. They were really dependent on a lot of other teams or other initiatives, which meant you can't really do much with these. If you start a project, like I did with Move to the Cloud, you're never going to move to the cloud effectively. So took a step back, spoke to the product genius. What do I do with this? I have no idea what to do with this. He said, we're building OKRs at the same time. Take a look, see what it means to you, see if any of this makes sense. So Neobank, they were focusing on emerging markets. So they were really, really key on providing a premium banking experience and a stable banking experience to people. And they came up with 3 different initiatives or objectives under here that they wanted to focus on. So first one, confirm money in and money out movements within 20 seconds. So if I'm sending money to you, then I want that to be done in 20 seconds. Sorry, I'm not actually going to send you any money. But components already existed, and they had a clear plan of how they were going to get to that target. Couldn't really help there. So next one, improve the clarity of the onboarding process. So if you have a bank account with someone, you want to be able to just get access to that bank account. You don't want to provide a picture of your face and your passport a million times. You don't want it to make questions that contradicted each other. You didn't want to get asked how much you earned 5 different times without an explanation of why they needed to know how much money you earned. So they needed some copywriting changes. They needed to rejig how the process fit together, made it more cohesive. But the team was already there, and they were already very experienced in it. We didn't think we could help much there either. But the last one, give customers access to a free virtual card. Connect it up with Apple Pay and Google Pay. They needed new components. This is brand new. Previously, they'd got into a habit of if they needed to get a feature out quickly, they would just build it into the existing stuff. I don't know if you have worked on distributed monolith systems that originally started as really good idea microservices. That's where they ended up. And this is a neobank. You need to move really, really fast to keep up with your competition. So they needed new components. And like I said before, the estimated time to market was 3 months. And that was almost entirely due to handovers. The teams themselves said they could figure out the dev in 3 weeks, get it done, get it ready to go. But they would have to wait all that extra time for sign-offs, for security to give their stamp of approval, and for the infrastructure team to actually pull their finger out and deliver the components that they needed. So that's our winner. That's who we're going to work with. So thinking back to what we had for our missions and our original initiatives, if we enabled that cards team to self-serve their infrastructure and pipelines related to that virtual card, so they could do it entirely themselves, we just give them a bunch of templates, that would hit 2 of our initiatives that we wanted to do. It wouldn't hit them completely, but it would be a good start. So we'd be able to infra as code some things, not everything, but teams would be able to provision their own services. And then if we grow on that to number 2, provide a framework for this cards team to easily monitor and observe this new virtual card service, then we've improved the observability and the alerting and monitoring for banking customers. So they're able to make sure that their system doesn't go down. And if it does go down, it gets fixed really, really fast. And also the management team, they get a breakdown of the infra costs. Before, when it's one giant monolith, you've no idea what each feature that you've built costs you. You've no idea if it's going to be more effective to turn that off. Are you getting any ROI at all? And lastly, a monitoring dashboard for the services as well, so they can see what everything's up. Their CTO of this company was amazing. And she would sort of snoop around on Slack for teams to see what they were doing and making sure that they were being sensible and that they weren't like naming things, ridiculous things, you know, name it what it is. And she would constantly look at Slack, and that would be the only way she'd know if services were down, because the ops team would ping off a bunch of messages in Slack to other teams where she would have to come in and start coordinating. Waste of her time. But if we give a monitoring dashboard, teams can look after themselves. She doesn't have to snoop on Slack at 10 o'clock at night. There was a big OKR playback. So teams were asked to sit down and present the initiatives that they came up with all the way up through the top level vision, all the way down to what they were going to do and see how it linked. Every other team went before us because we were infrastructure, so of course we were last. They all had features, they had good metrics that looked really busy. Got to our team and we said we were going to help this team deliver their new infrastructure, deliver this new feature in 3 weeks. And this is the most important initiative we have. They were words that came out of the mouth of an actual CEO of an actual registered bank about an infrastructure project. And I think he meant it. So the real benefit for him and that we were able to explain is you build this once, that's not just once. This isn't just helping them reduce from 3 months to 3 weeks now. It helps them forever. You're able to scale it, you're able to grow it, you're able to add more features to it, you're able to make this usable by other teams. It's just a foundation. And they did, it was amazing. It was really, really awesome watching the celebration messages go around on Slack and doing the showcases with this new functionality. And it was the time when it sort of clicked in my head that this was important and that CEOs and MDs and product people really need to understand what you're doing and why it's important. So going back to that first one, where I didn't do a very good job, the product people didn't really understand what we were doing, we didn't meet marketing's goal, what would I have done differently? First, I would have taken this goal that we had and thrown it away. It was awful, it was rubbish, never do it, never have a goal of migrate everything to the cloud all at once. It's not worth it. Instead, I would think about the missions and define them properly. So this is defining who you're building for. So we want the tech community, and this one you can lift and shift. It's probably going to be the same wherever you go. You're probably going to be needing to build something for the tech community. You're probably going to need it to reduce cognitive load, blockers, handovers, improve productivity, do all of those arrows that I showed you on that state of DevOps diagram at the beginning. Second, for the ops community. So this company had a really hard done by ops team. They were really, really lovely people, but they entirely focused on the infrastructure, and they were kind of that classic fling it over to the fence to operations to support it when you're done. No, so we're going to focus on them. We're going to make it easy to maintain the system and to create reliable services for the customer. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you can break that out. So that reliability one, that was for marketing as well. So maybe you have marketing as your users. This will change depending on what your priorities are. And then for the final one, I mentioned it was an insurance company. Any of you who've put your details in to compare the market, you will know that you have to give away your life and sign away your soul and tell them every single piece of information about you, particularly home insurance. They want to know everything. So for security community, we want to provide a simple self-service way to keep accreditation and improve the security of the system. So we want to make sure that all of your data is safe. We want to make sure that everyone knows that your data is safe as well. So yeah, these are kind of the easy things. You'll know your business better than I do. You'll know your teams that you're working with. Then brainstorm ideas. So I really like doing this first because it gives you that breadth. Don't constrain yourselves by what the organization thinks they need. These are just some ones that I've come up with off the top of my head. They'll be different depending on what your priorities or what you think your system needs, but align them to the groups that you've chosen at the top. So think of your customers first. It can be very tempting to come up with the ideas and then map it back, but try to avoid it. So that would be what I do next. Get all your ideas out on paper. And then finally, align it back up. So this company was migrating from, like I was saying, a lot of people were on this on-prem legacy. Lots of people were there already. They wanted to go to the new, whizzy, more functional, much more modern system. So they had two main goals, really, and I've made up the numbers here, but they wanted to persuade existing customers to move to the new product because they were like, no, this works for me, I don't want to move over. And the reason why is because they were worried that quotes would take a really, really long time. They were already taking quite a long time, but they weren't able to speed it up. So maybe we can help provide a quote in the new system within 10 seconds. But also, they wanted the same core functionality as the legacy product. So they don't want to be learning new ways of doing things. The main value chain, the loop that they went through, worked. And the second one is add 20 new customers. So the way they were thinking of doing that is be as reliable as our competitors. Like I said at the beginning, marketing got their idea in there somewhere. And also create a seamless quote to purchase experience. So you're not constantly jumping between different websites or different systems, or you can just get your quote, buy your quote. Right, so probably can't help with providing any functionality. We're a platform infra team. And again, can't really help with providing that clear, seamless quoting experience. But we can help with providing a quote in the new system within 10 seconds, because the infra has a huge impact on how fast the things on top of it move. So we were focusing there. So find your red thread. Persuade 10 existing customers to move to the new product. So that's the top level business objective. Their bet, provide a quote in the new system within 10 seconds. There's probably going to be a team, if that's one of your organizational bets, to come up with a new quote component. They might do a lot of different things around here, but that's probably going to be something a team would work with, and that was my guess. There was a team that was tasked there as well to help improve that quoting performance. So what could we do? We could help create self-service pipelines for that new quoting component. That'd be pretty cool. That would help them speed up so they're able to get things out faster, and then they can play around with their own pipelines, add the checks they need, do whatever they want, choose whatever component they want, go crazy. So get your red thread. And if you find that red thread from top to bottom, then you're going to have a really, really easy time telling that story to any product people, any leadership, any management of what this means. Self-service pipeline, that's like, I don't understand what that means, but showing that all the way from the business objectives, that makes sense. Then validate it against your missions. So you can come up with whatever you want, but if it doesn't make sense in terms of what you said you wanted to do, then what's the point? So here's how this top one that we came up with, the self-service pipeline, would work for all of those. We've got self-service pipelines, obviously. Delivery platform, yeah, it's the starts of that. It'll help achieve some of those goals. Infra as code, everything, yeah, there'll be that. Doesn't help the ops community much, but that can come later. And you can introduce security monitoring in the pipeline. So this is the one I like to think about as well with these pipeline tools, is you're able to do a lot more checks in pipelines. You can reduce a lot of the manual overhead. If you've got a week spent in security, you can help tease away some of those problems. So I picked that one instead. So instead of having move everything to the cloud, I would pick create self-service pipelines for new quote component, one particular team, and then you can scale that. And I know it's long, you've probably listened to a lot of people talking, so I'm going to give you a quick TLDR. So number one, take a photo of this, share it with your boss. Infrastructure folks are right about what they do 90% of the time. That's what I found, like, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. However, business folks don't understand that. They don't understand the lingo, and more importantly, they don't have the time to. They've got a really important job of their own, making sure that the company is moving in the right direction. So you've got to figure out how to speak their word, speak their language, come into their world a little bit more. And why? Because there are massive benefits in linking what you do to the things the business folks care about in small chunks. So what you do will directly impact their goals. So they need to understand what you're doing. And if you get buy-in, you'll be able to get it done a lot quicker, and they'll probably be less annoying about it because they won't be asking you to justify your budget or justify your spend, because you will have already explained why it's important to them. And doing it in small chunks mean they get that value really, really quickly, and they can see the incremental improvement of what you're doing for them. And how you can do it is use product thinking. I've given you a little snippet of the product thinking that I use there, but there's loads more. Product people, product managers are crazy prolific about writing things down. They love it. They will write absolutely everything that they can. There are a million blogs. Look it up for yourself. I'm sure you'll have a much better time than I would giving out some of my resources. But yeah, if you don't take anything away, take away this page. And thank you. that's all I've got to tell you about today. Thank you very much.